to Leszewski. Leszewski for three. Got it!
Huddle, gotta cuddle.
Irish fans to Breaking Down Breeze Boys podcast. Today's just me, and this video I've been working on for a long time. I've watched more high school basketball than I've ever watched in my life. For people in my class, which is really weird. But in this video, I'm going to analyze and say the strengths, some concerns, and share some current player comparisons and background info on every guy Notre Dame has talked to in the 2022 class. Notre Dame's offered 3 guys. All 3 of them are in the top 100, 1 5-star, 2 4-stars. All 3 of them are really exciting prospects, and they could have a huge impact on the program. I don't think I've ever seen Mike Brey go this hard on the first 2 or 3 days of a class being open. In 2019, he kind of struck out going for big names like Cole Anthony, I think Isaiah Stewart, guys like that. But this year, or not this year, but 2022, that could be a huge year for Coach Brey. I think it's somewhat realistic, maybe not realistic, that they could maybe get their first 5-star in program history in this class. They also have a ton of really promising 4-stars. So it could be kind of like the 2018 class with Prentice Hub and Robbie Carmody and all those guys. So let's get into it. First, we're going to go with the Irish first offer, Donovan Clingan. Donovan Clingan is the first guy Notre Dame offered in the class of 2022. They offered him just a few hours after they were able to. He's a 4-star ranked number 47 in the class by Rivals. He has offers from, obviously, Notre Dame, Maryland, Michigan State, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Iowa, and a few others, which are there's a couple other notable ones, but those are the main ones. 247 Sports has him listed as 7'1", 255 pounds. I would say his best attribute is his size. Some other strengths he has are finishing in the paint, blocking shots. He's a great rebounder. He's a good passer out of the post, and he just uses his size well overall. Obviously, you're still going to have people who say, oh, he's only good because of his size, but I think there's more to his game. Obviously, there's some concerns with a guy who's 7'1", and maybe sort of a stick, not really, though. Some concerns are he's always been the tallest player on the court. When he gets to the ACC, he'll probably face guys who are at least close to his size. He needs to develop some more post moves and use them consistently. He needs to grow in his body. Like I said, he's not super big. Maybe he needs to get to like Oliver Sarr weight, just like he was for a 7'1" guy. Another thing is he doesn't really take jump shots, which is also okay. You just have to be able to develop your post moves and be a nice body down low. I would say his current player comparison for Notre Dame is Juwan Durham. Obviously, this one was kind of an easy one. Juwan Durham isn't that size. His high school highlights maybe don't look like that, but they're both kind of just traditional centers who don't really take too many jump shots, even though Durham has that post fade. There's a lot of similarities between them, kind of like that they're both a little bit skinny. They both use their size really well. So let's get into the next. Said on the first day of recruiting, Notre Dame offered 4-star Donovan Clingan, but they also offered 4-star Prince Aligbe. He goes to Minnehaha in Minnesota, along with Jalen Suggs and Chet Holmgreen, one of the best programs in the nation, top 25 program for pretty much the whole year. He's a 4-star, ranked 73rd in the class by 247 Sports. His other offers, along with Notre Dame, are LSU, Maryland, Florida, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and a few others. But let's get into some of his highlights, and I'll break down his game. So, like I said, Prince has some really big offers, and he's ranked pretty high. I almost think he's underrated. I would say his biggest attribute is his size. He has a ton of ability all around. He's a really well-rounded player, but his size helps him get to the basket. He can play good defense with it and get shots off. He's muscular and has good length, which I think is really rare. Most of the time when we see guys come into Notre Dame, they're kind of raw physically, kind of like a J.R. Knesny, Nate Leszewski, kind of like those guys, where they don't have a ton of muscle built up. But this guy, when he comes in, he'll be immediately ready. Well, maybe not immediately ready, but his body will be ready. Some of his other strengths are he can score on all 3 levels. He's a good passer. He's tough to score on, and he's really athletic. In these clips, you'll see him kind of as just a dunker, but he's a lot more than that if you watch full games. This is just his mixtape. Oh, that was a nice dunk. But if you watch his full games, he's a lot more than just a dunker. Maybe he should be more aggressive at driving at times, but other than that, he's a really good player. He uses his athleticism well. However, some concerns, which it was really hard to find, some concerns were he plays on a powerhouse, so he's not the first option. Jalen Suggs is the first option. Maybe Chet Holmgreen is the number 2 option. And 2 things he said he wants to improve on are his motor and his half-court offense. He said that at the beginning of the year. So hopefully he can do that by the time he gets to Notre Dame, especially if he's focusing on him. And for the current player comparison, I thought it was really hard to pick a current player. I don't think Notre Dame really has anybody with his unique skill set and his athleticism. I would say the closest they have to that is Robbie Carmody. Just like Carmody, he's really different from anything they have. Robbie would have been huge last year because he can get to the basket, and Notre Dame wouldn't have had to rely on the 3-ball. But I think Prince can do the same thing, maybe to an even higher level once he's in college. I guess you could say Robbie, but in my opinion, his skill set is probably even wider than Robbie. He's probably more athletic too. He almost reminds me of a guy like DeAndre Hunter and Sear Little. Maybe that's not a phenomenal comparison, but the way he scores, the way he plays on both ends is great to me. So that's my comparison for him. The next guy we have is Jarace Walker, the 5-star from IMG. So I'll tell you a little bit about him in a second. At this point, the last offer Notre Dame has given out in the class of 2022 is Jarace Walker. He's a 5-star from IMG who's ranked by 247 and is the number 6 player in the class. He's insane. It's really hard to find weaknesses in his game. He has offers from Florida, Maryland, Syracuse, Auburn, LSU, and a few others. I would think some bigger schools will offer him down the line because he's a legit prospect, probably an NBA prospect at some point. I think he's a really good fit personality-wise with Notre Dame. He seems like a really nice guy. Also, Notre Dame has a connection to IMG with Kyle Bray's the football coach, Mike Bray's son. So maybe he can do some talking or whatever and maybe pick him up, help Mike Bray get his first 5-star in program history. So that would be great. Let's get into the breakdown. So in my opinion, Walker's best attribute is his playmaking all around. I think he's really good at getting to the basket and creating for his teammates, along with scoring for himself. That may be an unpopular opinion, but I think that's he's described that as one of his best, and I think that is his best. Some other strengths are I've heard he has a really high basketball IQ. I know he can score at all 3 levels. He has great size. He's really athletic, and he plays against some of the best competition in the country. Not really many concerns at all. This was actually super hard to find concerns for. He's a 5-star. He's one of the best players in the country in the class. The only thing I will say is he plays for IMG, so he has talent all around him. It's not super hard, you would think, when you have a bunch of college recruits around you, but I think he'll be fine. He's insane, but that's about all I have to say for him. My current player comparison, I don't even know. There's just nobody like him on the roster. I guess you could say Robbie Carmody, but kind of like Prince, you just can't really compare the two. I think there's way more of a comparison between Prince and Robbie than Jarace and Robbie, but that's kind of all I have to say about him. So on to the next guy. That's it for the guys Notre Dame offered. Now we'll move on to some guys that they haven't offered but they've been talking to. This one is a guy that I think he probably could be a candidate for an offer, one of the more likely ones out of the bunch. I'm not guaranteeing he will get an offer, but I think it's very possible. This is Starling. He was ranked 91st in the country by Rivals. He's a 4-star. He's been in contact with Duke, if that tells you anything. He also has offers from Bama and Syracuse and a few others. Duke hasn't offered, though. He told it was quoted in an article that Ryan Ayers said he was the best shooter in the country, and I think that's one of the best parts about his game. So let's get into the breakdown.
So like I said, I think Starling's biggest attribute is his shooting. One of the best shooters in the class. Like I said, Ayers said that he's the best shooter in the class. Some other strengths he has is he has a great wingspan. He has a lot of length. He can score at all 3 levels, which is really good. I think his length allows him to be a good defender also. Some concerns, these are kind of reaches, but his shot selection isn't great. But in these highlights, you see he makes like everything, and if you watch full games, that's kind of also the case. Some other stuff is he doesn't really attack the basket as much as maybe he should, but that's probably because he just makes every 3 he takes. A current player comparison is Trey Wirtz. I know he's not super current because he is a transfer, but I think their games are very. I'm actually going to cut the camera without me. It'll just be the highlights in the background with a voiceover now, just to save time off the video. But this next guy is Eli King, as you see in the background. He actually got a Notre Dame football offer, and he's going to take a dual sport visit. At least that's the plan to Notre Dame. Notre Dame basketball hasn't offered. I don't know exactly how that works, though. In basketball, he averaged 16 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks per game. In my opinion, his best attribute is his athleticism. As you'll see, he's out getting steals. He's getting on the break and dunking with ease. Some other strengths he has are he's great at getting to the rim and finishing through contact. He's a good shooter, and he's a pretty good passer, especially in transition. Some mild concerns are he's probably going to play 2 sports, and he isn't a huge guy. Maybe it could wear on him. I'm not super concerned about that. Also, he lives in a small town in Minnesota, so it's probably the competition probably isn't too high, especially from the full games I've watched of him. The current player comparison I have is Cormac Ryan. I don't know if there's really that great of a guy to compare him to. I guess Cormac Ryan and Robbie Carmody, kind of a mix between the two. But nobody really stands out as a comparison for him. But I think he's one of my favorite players in the class, one of the most underrated players. It's just a question of will he play basketball in college? And if he does, I think he'll be a big impact player, and he could really help Notre Dame. So now on to our next player. The guy Notre Dame has looked at is an unranked guard from, I think, Michigan. His brother goes to Michigan State, Fletcher Loyer. His best attribute is shooting. He shot 48% from 3, which is insane. I don't know how he did that. Some other strengths he has are a high basketball IQ. He's a really good passer, and he has a nice floater, which people say he may have a lack of athleticism, so he uses his floater to make up for it. This kind of reminds me of TJ Gibbs in that way. Some concerns, he actually said these first 2 were his speed and explosiveness. Also, maybe he's not the best at attacking the basket, and he could get a little bit tighter handle. I believe he also said the tighter handle one. A current player comparison is Dane Goodwin, kind of just a shooter, a guy who you can rely on to hit a 3. Once in a while, he'll take it to the basket and score, but I don't know if you can totally rely on that. But I really like him as a prospect. I think he should be ranked soon, just like the next guy. And let's get into him. Next guy is Kyle Filipowski. Like I said, he's unranked, but I don't think he should be. He scored 20 points per game last year, 10.5 rebounds per game, and he shot 55% from the field. His best attribute, in my opinion, is his versatility. I see him as a stretch 4 or 5, but a couple people have said he can be a 3. His strengths are shooting. He's good off the dribble for his size. He's pretty athletic and quick for his size, and he has good length on defense, which probably gives him a high ceiling as a defender. Some concerns are his shot selection to an extent. He has kind of the same build as Nate Leshevsky in high school, so he may need to bulk up, but he's only a sophomore, so that can be fixed. Like I said, his current player comparison is Nate Leshevsky. He also compared himself to a mix of Kevin Love and Kevin Durant, which you definitely can see if you watch him on film. But it's really hard to find film. That's why it's just a picture of him. But now on to the next guy. Here's another unranked guy. His name is Aidan Braccia. He lives in California. In my opinion, his best attribute is his shooting. Some other strengths he has are his passing. He's a really good defender, really aggressive, always has active hands and creates turnovers. He plays super hard, And some concerns are he's a little undersized, maybe like Prentice Hub. He's also not a super complete scorer. He doesn't really attack the basket as much as maybe some other guys do. This one was also kind of a no-brainer for current player comparison. I'd have to say Prentice Hub. Shoots a lot of threes, plays really hard. Just a perfect match to Prentice Hub, in my opinion. Notre Dame's talked to him a few times, and he also followed me back on Twitter and texted me back, so that was pretty cool. Hopefully they can make some more moves with this guy. I think all these unranked guys, I think will be ranked at some point, so look out for that. Now on to a ranked guy next. Next guy is going to be one of my favorite players that Notre Dame's talked to, but although they haven't offered. His name's Rodney Rice. He's a 4-star. He has offers from Marquette, LSU, UConn, Maryland, and a few others. I think he's pretty underrated. The good thing about him is that he's transferring to DeMatha, so Mike Brey does have a connection with him. In my opinion, his biggest strength is that he's a 3-level scorer, so that can really help, especially in Brey's offense. The strengths are he has a good array of moves, he's a good shooter, he has a tight handle, and he can finish through contact, which are all really useful at the college level. Some concerns are he may struggle to adjust to the speed of college basketball. As you can see in these highlights, the game moves pretty slow, it seems like. I haven't really found full games, though, so it's kind of hard to see. But I'm sure there are a couple more things, but in my opinion, he's a pretty well-rounded player. My current player comparison is going to be Cormac Ryan, just because he can score at all 3 levels. He can score off the dribble. He has good length. But he does remind me of sort of a taller Demetrius Jackson. I don't know how accurate that is. That's just what he reminded me of. But I think he could maybe pick up an offer. I obviously haven't heard anything about that. But I do think he would be a good fit at Notre Dame if everything is right with him, and he could be a nice addition. Now on to the next guy. The second of 3 5-stars that Notre Dame's talked to. His name's Jaden Bradley. He's a 5-star, obviously, who's ranked 12th in the class by 247. He's transferring to IMG, so Mike Brey has a connection. Like I said earlier, his son is the football coach. In my opinion, his biggest attribute is his scoring ability. Some other strengths he has are he's a great passer, really good ball handler, good size, and he's a pretty good all-around point guard, if you ask me. Some concerns, though, this isn't really for me, but people have said he's not the best three-point shooter. Obviously, we can't see a percentage because he's in high school. But people have also said there's concerns about his athleticism, which you can sort of see. Some of his lateral quickness isn't that great, but he's still a crazy 5-star. He's amazing. It would be awesome if they could somehow land him. So a current player comparison is Cormac Ryan. They don't really have anybody like him on the roster. I guess you could say Cormac's sort of similar, but the way he can just dunk on people, the way he can play make, I don't think any guy on Notre Dame is really that great like that. A lot of people say he reminds him of like John Wall when he was in high school. Obviously not to that extent, but I can sort of see it. Our next guy is going to be Jaden Schutt. He's a 3-star, and I'll get into him now. So now we're on to Jaden Schutt. Like I said, he's a 3-star from Illinois. He averages 22 points a game, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists if I'm rounding up, which is insane. That's a really good stat line, especially as a sophomore in high school. In my opinion, his best attribute is that he can score at all 3 levels. He can hit tough shots. Some other strengths are his athleticism. You'll probably see a few dunks and blocks in here. Like I said, he can score off the dribble. He can shoot really well. And he's good at forcing turnovers on defense by watching highlights. It is pretty hard to find full games of him, so I can't get a great glimpse of him. But some concerns are shot selection. If all we have is highlights and he's making all these crazy shots, odds are he's missing some of them too, unless he's J.J. Starling and he's making every single one. Another thing is he should probably attack the basket more. And I've heard some people talk about his frame. He may be like a J.R. Knesny where he has to put on some muscle, but I'm not exactly sure. His current player comparison, another one's kind of difficult. I'd say probably a mix of Cormac Ryan, Dane Goodwin, and Robbie Carmody. I know the last few I haven't really had a guy, but some of these guys are really different from what Notre Dame has. Also, sort of reminds me of Jarace, but I think he could be a pretty solid player for the program. Even though he's just a 3-star, he could probably climb the rankings in the next few years. Just like this next guy who also reminds me of Jarace. Let's get into him now. For another guy I think is really underrated, another 3-star, Isaac Trout. He's ranked number 118 in the class by Rivals. He averages 17 points a game and 6 rebounds. It was actually kind of hard to see if they actually talked to him. Everybody knew they had interest, but Nathan Urvac, I think that's how you say his last name, just confirmed it a couple days ago. Go follow him if you haven't. He's one of the best recruiting guys on Notre Dame Twitter. Isaac also has offers from Creighton, Nebraska, Kansas State, and Wyoming. I think those would go up soon. But in my opinion, his best attribute is his shooting. He also has good length, and he's athletic, which is good. Some concerns, like Jarace, he'll probably have to put on a little bit of muscle before he gets to college. He also said his ball handling and finishing probably need work. He said that about a month and a half ago. Current player comparison would be Dane Goodwin, but more than anything, he reminds me of Jarace. That's why I like him. He is really similar in the way he moves, the shots he takes, and all that. And he can hit contested shots, which is really nice. He can dunk. Just really impressive for a 3-star. I wasn't expecting that. Now on to a 5-star to get out of the 3-star range, Dylan Andrews. So we'll get to there in a second. So this guy and the next guy are two of the more exciting players in the class, two of the more highly touted guys left. This one is Dylan Andrews. He's a 5-star from California, from LA. There wasn't really a mixtape or anything of him with his highlights. It was all just game footage, so I couldn't really put any in the background. But he's a 5-star from LA, like I said. He has offers from a ton of huge recruiting schools like ASU, Arizona, Kansas, Oregon, UCLA, USC, and a few others. I think his only ACC offer is Pitt, though. He's ranked 15th in the class by 247. In my opinion, his biggest ability is his scoring ability. He can shoot. He's a good rebounder for a point guard, and he's clutch. He hits buzzer beaters. Two concerns I have, though, are that he's inconsistent at times, and he could probably be better at finishing through contact at times. That was a big concern for whatever reason. I would say, you guys are going to hate me, but Cormac Ryan is his best comparison because he can score off the dribble, he's athletic, and he's a good defender. Now on to Grady Dick from Kansas. Grady Dick is a really interesting guy that Notre Dame's looking at. He's a 4-star from Kansas who's ranked 32nd in the country in the class by Rivals. He averages 20 points a game, 5 rebounds, and 2.3 assists. In my opinion, well, I think in a lot of people's opinion, his best attributes is athleticism. He's one of the most athletic guys in the country, which is part of the thing that makes him so interesting. If you look at these highlights, he's just doing crazy dunks. He's getting chased down blocks, all that kind of stuff. But he uses his strength really well. He has good size for a guard, and because of his athleticism and some of his shot-making abilities, he has a really high ceiling. The problem is he's really athletic, and if you look at his competition, it's not that crazy. He's jumping higher than all of them. He's bigger than most of the guards he's playing, so that could be a concern. A lot of people have struggled with the just athletic label, and I could see that maybe happening for him. But he is a really good player. I would compare him to Robbie Carmody on the roster just because of how athletic he is. And he's getting more well-rounded as the season goes on. He also reminds me of Mac McClung, kind of the same skill set, kind of the same, what would I call it? Same style in college or in high school. But that's what I have to say about him. There's only a couple guys left, so let's get through it now. So this one is a really weird one. This is Jameel Brown. He's a 4-star. I don't know exactly where he's from, but the thing about him is he played 3 years in a sophomore season, which is crazy, and he's still a 4-star, still highly touted. He's talked to a lot of schools. he actually liked my tweet when I talked about every guy Notre Dame's talked to or whatever. In my opinion, I think he's a really good shooter. That's probably his best attribute. He's a good spot-up shooter. He has a lot of range. I've barely even seen him play. There's not too much tape out there except for like middle school tape. But from what I've seen, he's a good scorer from all three levels. He's good at getting in passing lanes, getting steals. He's a pretty good passer too. But my concern is, obviously, we haven't really seen that much tape. All his tape is from middle school and freshman year, so that's really hard to judge. And he missed the majority of the season with an injury, so that's also a concern. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But I don't know. He could be a really nice under-the-radar pickup if they could overcome his injuries and he can put some more tape out there. He could be a really interesting guy for Notre Dame to make an offer or maybe even pick up. So now we're out of 4 and 5 stars and we're back into the unranked and 3 stars. This guy's unranked. His name's Braden Huff. He's 6'9", 205 pounds. He's a power forward. I think also in Illinois. He averages 15.7 points a game, 7.6 rebounds, 2.7 blocks, and 2.5 assists. In my opinion, his biggest attribute is his shooting. He shot 42% from 3, which is really nice for a stretch big. Some other strengths are he can finish through contact. He has a good handle for a big guy. He's versatile. He can maybe even play the 3, and he has good length. A couple concerns are he needs to bulk up. I didn't think of that. That was online in an article. He doesn't play super fast either. I noticed that he has a little bit of a slow release on his shot, which could come back to bite him in the ACC. My current player comparison is going to be Nate Laszewski. For obvious reasons, he's a stretch big just like him. Only a few more guys to go. Let's get through it. So the second to last guy Notre Dame's reached out to, well, not in chronological order, but in general, Kamari lands. He's a 4-star small forward from Indiana, Loyer, which is Jaden Ivey's school, the women's coach's son. Notre Dame hasn't had good luck recruiting there, even though we're in Indiana somehow. Jaden Ivey was a big part of that too. Even though Loyer has a Notre Dame alum as their coach, but it's all right. Kamari lands is the 27th ranked player in the class of 2022 by 247. In my opinion, his biggest attributes is scoring ability. He's always scoring against great teams, even over Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey doesn't always show up in those games, but he has really good size. He plays really good competition, like I said. He played against Prolific Prep, which is, they have a whole documentary about them on Overtime if you watch that. He's also a good defender. Some concerns, really hard to find concerns. One thing I would say is he's not the number 1 option on his team, but he probably will be maybe even this year or next year. And it could just be scheme, but it doesn't really seem like he moves without the ball too well. A lot of the time you just see him sitting in the corner, but like I said, that could just be scheme, so I'm not too worried about that. My current player comparison's got to be Robbie Carmody. They're somewhat similar, especially when they're in high school. Both can score at all 3 levels, athletic. Reminds me a lot of him. And now on to the last guy who Notre Dame reached out today. Here we go. The last guy Notre Dame's talked to, this one was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. I was pretty much done with the video, and then they talked to this guy, so I have to do him now. This is Ben Middlebrooks. He is a 3-star, I believe, or he's unranked. From Florida. He's a stretch 4. In my opinion, his biggest attribute is his ability to stretch the floor, like I said. He's also a really good rebounder. He has good size. He's a decent ball handler for his size, which is good. Some concerns, I guess, is inconsistency. There's not a whole lot of film on him. But I heard he scored 0 points in a game, and I was watching the game with them playing Montverde, which is obviously one of the best teams in the country, maybe one of the best high school basketball teams of all time. But he didn't really score at all in that game, so that's a little bit concerning, but not too much else. Really good all-around player. I think his current player comparison, it was easy. Nate Laszewski again, a guy who can stretch the floor, who can rebound at a decent level. Probably a better rebounder than Nate. But, yeah, that's all I have to say for him. There's not too much film on him to look at. But that's all for the video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll have a video next week probably. I haven't decided what I'm going to do, but I have a couple ideas. But that's all for this one. Thank you guys for watching. Go Irish. Peace.